All right, welcome back to another installation of meeting up with some old boys. This is David. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit.
Hey Adam, I'm David Jones, and I played with what was the Johnson City Pumas and then became the Silver Bullets, starting in 1982 through 1988.
And what do you do like now as like
Oh,
how's for life
sure.
and stuff?
Yeah. So I'm a management consultant. I live here in Johnson City. I work with organizations that are looking to take their operations from good to great, from mediocre to excellent. And I coach leaders and in how to do that,
Oh,
and enjoying every minute of it. It's very rewarding. And have been in Johnson City since '82, since I moved down here
oh, that's awesome. Where'd you move from?
from Indiana.
Oh,
Just
really? I'm from Indiana.
Oh, where in Indiana?
Brookville,
Brookville.
down by
Okay.
Cincinnati.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I went to high school in Shelbyville,
Oh, that's
and
not too far. Nice.
my parents are still there. My brother's up in Indianapolis, so we go right by Brookville every time, right on 74. We just go
Yep.
right on up. Um, so awesome.
Oh, that's really cool. Um, so was John City the first team that you played rugby with?
Yeah. We moved to Indiana when I was, let's see, between my freshman and sophomore years in high school. And I played soccer up until that point.
Mhm.
But when we got to Shelbyville in the 1970s, and I'm dating myself right now, but the 1970s, they didn't have soccer teams. So I played football there. I played intramural soccer in college at Purdue. And then when I came down to Johnson City, worked for Texas Instruments, which is now the Borla plant on the south end of town,
Mhm.
and had a friend there, Dennis Karen, who was playing with the team. He was a couple years older than me, and he said, "Hey, you got to come out and play rugby." And I said, "No, thanks. No, I like soccer, and rugby's for hooligans, and it's just not me." And he said, "No, no, you really got to come out. Just give it a try. Give it a try." So I came out and I loved it, and stayed. I did play a little bit of soccer here in town, and those guys were great, but I just felt more at home with the rugby team, and so learned the sport from the best. I mean, Pete, I don't know anybody that knows more about rugby, or at least back then knew more about rugby. The game's changed now, of course, a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was my first experience, starting in '82.
Oh, that's awesome. Did so how long did you play with John City and how long did you play rugby in general?
Well, with Johnson City until the fall of '88, and then I blew out my ACL
Mhm.
down in a match against Clemson. It was a cheap shot, ended my career. Um, it was surgically repaired, and it's doing great. I run marathons, I ski, I play basketball. It hasn't slowed me down, but I have to wear a brace.
Yeah.
And, the referees kind of frown on that when you step on a field with a brace. So I played one or two old boys games. They're a little more tolerant of guys on crutches and in braces and things. So, but that's been about it since late 1988.
Okay. Um, let's see. So you were with John City whenever they first kind of started,
Yeah, I
and
can't.
yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, how was the team? Like, how competitive were you guys?
Oh, we were awesome.
Yeah.
And the older we get, the awesomer we were. Uh, but we actually were pretty good. I remember a couple of seasons where we were undefeated, 8-0, 9-0, 10-0 kind of records. Um, Pete Chollerton founded the team in '81, and I came in '82. So it was the second year. And mostly there were a lot of guys that had played football in high school and college that were on the team. And so we were all kind of learning it together. But Pete was a masterful field general, and he could just guide us down the field. He played fly half. Sometimes he played scrum half, but he played fly half. Man, we were hard to beat. We were absolutely hard to beat.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How were the socials?
Socials were really good. It's not there anymore, but we used to hang out at Poor Richard's Deli quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know where that is, near campus down there. We'd practice. I don't know what you guys do. We practice twice a week, like Tuesday, Thursday kind of thing, games on Saturday. And when we were sponsored by Coors Light, then, you know, we were obliged to support our sponsor.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
How was that being sponsored by them?
That was really good. We worked with Bill Breeding down there at Kleist Distributing.
Mhm.
I think they've since been bought out, but they're down there on Lake Cox. And I remember John Bradley and I, if you know John the Beast Bradley.
I've not met him yet.
You need to meet John. He's a legend. There's a lot of legends from back then, I can tell
Oh,
you
yeah.
right now. A lot of real good athletes and really good people in the community.
Mhm.
I remember John and I, what I did was there were several of us that made it a point to call the newspaper, tell them when we were playing. And once in a while we'd get some coverage. And actually somewhere around here, I've got some clippings I can show you.
Oh, yeah.
And then we'd call the TV station and we'd get coverage. Or if they didn't show up to the game, we'd call them afterwards and we'd phone in the score and give them some highlights and whatnot. So we got pretty good coverage. So what I did was I measured like the column inches of press that we got. And I made sure that they always said the Johnson City Silver Bullets in the news. So we would get a little blurb, but I measured through the year, through the actually 3 seasons, right? Spring, sevens in the summer, and tournaments, and then in the fall. I'd measure those. And then I call the newspaper and I ask them, what are your advertising rates? What do you charge per column inch? And so I'd convert that news coverage to a value, a dollar value. Then I'd do the same with TV coverage. I'd call the station, say, what do you charge for a 30-second commercial or a 1-minute commercial? And they tell me, and I'd convert our TV coverage to dollars. And then I calculated all the practices, all the times we bought kegs after, you know, for the after parties, all of the beer we drank, and I add all this up and come up with a number. And I go into Bill Breeding and say, Bill, here's my calculations to show for your sponsorship, this is what you're getting. And I remember going in one time, we had probably $10,000 or $12,000 in value that he was getting, you know, using this math. And we were only asking for 2,000. And before I even finished, he lifts his head up and he hollers out to his administrative assistant, bring the checkbook in here. I need to write these guys a check for $2,500. So he actually gave us a $500 extra.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So they were really good to work with. And then we would also get through them some rugby balls with Coors Light on them and some travel bags, things like that. We'd always get hats. They were really good supporters.
Heck yeah. That's so cool. So like, man, what kind of stuff did you guys do in the community as well?
What do you mean? Like
volunteer stuff? Did you guys do like volunteer stuff or?
No, we didn't do a lot of that. Not that I recall. We did set up a tournament. I remember during what used to be called Springfest in Johnson City. They had a Springfest. And so we set up a tournament, ran that for a few years. And so we would sort of support the community that way. And we would get press and coverage, and they would get an event on their calendar that they could talk about.
Yeah. Let's go with, what was the best part about being with Johnson City?
Oh, it was the guys. It was always the guys, right? hanging out with the guys. I think Doc said something like that too, the camaraderie in his video. Yeah, there's no question. You know what rugby's like. You're out there punching and kicking and biting and doing all that stuff for 80 minutes, and then you walk off the field and arm in arm, you walk out to the party. And that camaraderie isn't found in any other sport, to be honest, that I've seen. So hard to beat.
Yeah.
And we had some guys. We had some characters, which makes it extra spicy through the years. And we did some pretty cool things. I mean, we had these tournaments. We would go to sevens tournaments in the summer. We actually went up to Canada, played a couple of games.
Oh yeah.
Pete's originally from England, yeah, and he came through Canada on his way here. So he had connections up there in Hamilton and Burlington, I believe. And we all saved up our pennies and got on a plane, flew to Buffalo and rented a couple of vans and drove on up to Hamilton and Burlington, played a couple of games up there. Didn't win, but we played well. Pete had us in shape. That was probably the best shape we've ever been in. And we all wanted to do well for Pete.
Yeah.
But we couldn't quite win either game. They were close. They were tough. They were hard fought. We were jet lagged, and we were a lot of other things lagged.
That's it for the actual questions. But we talked a little bit before, and you said that you had some videos that you wanted to share.
Yeah. In fact, it does tie into what you're asking about, favorite memories. In 1987, in the spring, we had a wicked snowstorm in April, and we had a game scheduled with Tennessee Tech. And it was interesting because the storm was really just kind of narrowly located right over Johnson City. So the players from Tech could get here and just had a little bit of treacherous driving the last 10 or 15 miles. And so they made it to the game on Saturday. And we had 24, 26 inches of snow on the ground.
Oh my gosh.
We're playing. And then we, of course, like I said earlier, we called the newspaper, we called the television stations, and they were like, oh, thank you, because everything's shut down. There's no news today. So they came out and covered the game. And if we can get the tech to work here, I'm going to share my screen, and we'll show, I'll show you two videos. The first one is from that Snow Bowl.
The conditions not conducive for most spring sports, but the snow didn't dampen the spirits of area rugby players. The colder the better for these guys. The Johnson City Silver Bullets versus Tennessee Tech. Johnson City in the dark jersey. These guys are wearing shorts, but of course that's the proper rugby etiquette. Gotta have shorts regardless of the weather. These guys are nuts. Gotta get a picture of this stuff. Here's the scrum, as they say in jolly old England. The Bullets' Pete Charlerton will kick it out of there. I don't know what these guys are on, but fellas, next time just say no. Nice tackle here coming up by the Bullets, driving them right into the slush. Gotta love that stuff. No frostbite reported today, just good, clean violence. Johnson City went on to win the match 6-3. Charlie West with a try. Pete Charlerton added a 2-point conversion. Bullets now 4-0. Next week they'll play in Asheville, where the playing conditions are probably not much better, more like Alaskan rules football here today than Australian rules football. Well, Boston's...
So that was a lot of fun, that game. I don't know, could you see and hear that okay?
Yes, I could.
Awesome. Yeah, so that was some news coverage we got there. We made good friends with the guys at the newspaper and the guys on TV, and they always like to come out and cover the games. So that was fun.
That's really cool. Yeah, Sam was talking about the Snow Bowl being one of his favorite memories as well. So that was really cool that you were able to show those.
Yeah. Well, there's not much that stops a rugby player. So
no,
a couple of feet of snow, it doesn't matter. It's going to be a little more fun, a little slower, but a lot of fun. I've got another video here I can show you if you want to see it. They interviewed Pete, and this actually wasn't too much longer after the Snow Bowl. And it was one of the other local TV stations, interviewed Pete about the club itself, and gives a little idea of the history.
Oh yeah.
So we'll just pick up where we left off.
Roger Clemens is
Like
back.
elk, it may be worth the extra money.
We have to get past this
John
part.
Mungle, News Center 5, Outdoors.
Rugby is one of the most popular sports in Europe. It is slowly gaining interest in the United States as well. And as Brian Moore reports, one of the best rugby teams in the 5-state region is based in Johnson City.
When Pete Childerton came to Johnson City in 1981 from Great Britain, he wanted to organize a local rugby team. He placed an ad in a newspaper and attracted 20 players who knew little or nothing about rugby. 6 years later, the Johnson City Silver Bullets have become one of the best rugby teams in the 5-state region.
I could ascertain that there was a demand for some kind of a contact sport after high school or college for a lot of kids in the area, and this was a natural to insert rugby as that sport.
In rugby, each team tries to score by kicking, passing, or carrying the ball until they can kick it over the opponent's goal line or touch it down behind the opponent's goal line. American football developed from rugby, and both games are similar. Both involve kicking and tackling. But rugby players don't wear heavy protective gear. In fact, they look more like soccer players.
Rugby is a great game because it's a game that can be played by guys of all shapes and sizes. I think one of the great advantages of rugby is that it's basically a perpetual motion game. There are several stoppages, but very few. And the idea of the game is to keep the ball available and moving at all times. So as a spectator sport, it's very interesting.
Johnson City battled Emory and Henry Tuesday evening. The Silver Bullets beat the inexperienced Wasp 37-0. Children said rugby is not only gaining popularity in the 5-state region, but throughout America.
The exciting thing about it here is you're playing the game really at the grassroots level, and it's developing here in the States. And I can see a time, not in the too far distant future, where the United States is going to be a team in great contention so far as world power in rugby.
After Tuesday night's warm-up game between Emory and Henry and the Johnson City Rugby Club, those two teams will get ready for a big weekend tournament, the Coors Silver Bullet Tournament, coming up this coming Saturday, starting at 11 o'clock right here on the field at Freedom Hall, featuring Emory and Henry, the Johnson City Rugby Club, and also clubs from Columbia, South Carolina, and Radford, Virginia. Reporting from Johnson City, Brian Moore, News Center 5 Sports.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then we went on to sweep that tournament. So I think we finished that spring 8-0.
That's awesome.